Good evening. Welcome to Cleveland Park Library. My name is David Quick. I'm the Adult Services Coordinator here at DC Public Library. I'm going to be so short because we have a tight schedule and we want to get right to it. I just want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank our partner, Politics and Prose Bookstore. I hope you, with what's going on in the world, you know how important libraries are, you know how important independent bookstores are, so I'm really glad you're here supporting it. Just showing up for this is how you support it. I'll make one ask of you. I get to do so many of these author talks. It's a true privilege. A lot of it is literary talks, novels, poetry, things like this. But people are hungry to talk about mental health, so let your library know that you want to talk about this. I'm going to look for these opportunities, but let us know that you want to come and talk about these things with authors who are writing about that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my friend Elisa from the store, who's going to get us going with tonight's event. Thank you so much, everybody.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Elisa, and I am the Partnered Events Manager with Politics and Prose Bookstore. We are very excited to be partnering with the DC Public Library on tonight's event with Dr. Joseph and Glory. I'd like to start us off by welcoming our moderator this evening, Talia Cadet. Talia is a content creator and influencer with an audience of over 230,000 across social media platforms. Wow. Her DC book and Black-owned business videos have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Rolling Stone, and Essence. She's also a host who has been in conversation with New York Times best-selling authors like Kennedy Ryan, Victoria Christopher Murray, and Deneen Milner. Her advocacy as one of the 8 creator plaintiffs in the landmark lawsuit challenging the U.S. TikTok ban is highlighted in the Impact by Nightline TV special, The Death of TikTok, which is now streaming on Hulu. Talia has worked as a social media professional for over 10 years and currently serves as the Chief Digital Officer for a DC public affairs firm. She currently resides in Prince George's County, Maryland. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Talia Cadet.
Thank you. It's always weird hearing your bio about you read while you're in the room. But welcome, everybody. I am so excited today for today's book event. Like it was previously said, this is not about fiction. It's not literary. It's not poetry. This is about mental health. So everything you think about a book event, put that out your mind, because this is going to be a little bit different. Dr. Judith Joseph runs a happiness lab. So we're going to be participating in some interactive activities, to work through, HFD. You're going to learn what that is. So be prepared to, participate. I'm going to introduce our conversation partner tonight, Glory Edim. Glory Edim is the founder of Well Read Black Girl, a podcast and digital literacy platform that celebrates the uniqueness of Black literature and sisterhood. She edited the Well Read Black Girl anthology, which was nominated for an NAACP Image Award and named a Best Book of the Year by Library Journal. Glory's latest book, Gather Me, a memoir in praise of the books that saved me, is an inspiring memoir of family, community, and resilience. The winner of the Innovators Award from the Los Angeles Times Book Prizes, Edim worked as a cultural practitioner for over 10 years and serves on the board of the Baldwin for the Arts. She resides in Washington, D.C. with her son. So everyone, let's welcome Glory. And our author tonight, quick anecdote. So I met Dr. Judith back in September of last year, and we were at a TikTok event. I'm a TikToker. She's an even bigger TikToker. And when she introduced herself, she's like, yeah, I'm writing a book about high-functioning depression. And I'm like, now why am I? Like, what is this about me? And at the time, I didn't really have an idea of what she was talking about, but I kind of knew something was kind of eating at me that, oh, this might be applicable. So this lovely book came out a couple of weeks ago, and I read it, and it definitely applies. So I think you all are going to get some great information today. And about Dr. Judith Joseph, MD, MBA, she's a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist and researcher who specializes in mental health and trauma. She is the founder and chief investigator at the Manhattan Behavioral Medicine, New York City's premier clinical research site, where she conducted the first ever evidence-based study on high-functioning depression. She is a clinical assistant professor in child and adolescent psychiatry at NYU Langone Medical Center in Manhattan, and chair, wait, did I do something? I pressed something. And chair of the Women in Medicine Board of Columbia University's Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons. As one of social media's favorite psychiatrists, Dr. Judith gets more than 15 million views a month. Her Instagram has gotten more than 10 million impressions, and her TikToks have been viewed more than 5 million times in a month. She holds an undergraduate degree from Duke, as well as a medical doctorate and master's in business administration from Columbia. Everyone, let's welcome Dr. Judith Joseph.
Here we go. Let's give her another round of applause. Dr. Joseph, I feel like I've known you for a really long time. This is actually our first time meeting, but watching your TikToks, reading your book, I'm like, we are best friends now. You are my therapist.
Thank you. You know, like social makes you feel that way. Talia and I met at that TikTok event, and let me tell you, social media can be used for connection. Mm-hmm. She's helped me so much with this book stuff. Like, as a doctor, I don't know this stuff. You know, they kind of just like throw you in and say, write a book. But wow, I am so fortunate to have met her. And then through this community, I've met you.
Yes, and Talia is like the go-to. I feel like I get all my latest updates from her as well. And we make like a family online, and social media, like you said, can be used for so much good. So let's get into it. I have so many questions about your book, and I want to start with the basics. There is this idea of what happiness is and joy, and oftentimes people can conflate the two. You're a scientist and a therapist who studies happiness. What is the difference between happiness and joy?
Oh, that's a really good question. And so I have this research lab in Manhattan, but there's a second part of the lab called the Happiness Lab where we focus primarily on joy. And I have a private practice where my patients will come in and they'll say, Dr. Judith, I just want to be happy. And then I ask them, okay, well, what does happiness mean to you? And they'll say, oh, it's when I finally get married, or I have a job that I like, or I pay off my debt, or I have a house, all these things. And then I explain to them that in the research, what we know is that once you get those things, because you've delayed happiness for some event to happen, you're usually not happy. But in the research practice, the way that we measure happiness is actually by measuring points of joy. So for example, if you're hungry and you eat your food and you're like, that's good, that's a point. If you're tired and you get rest and you wake up feeling refreshed, that's a point. If you're lonely and you reach out and connect with someone and you feel loved, that's a point. So in the research lab, we add up these points of joy, and that's how we know that you're becoming happier. Yeah. Versus in the real world, it's like, well, when I get this, I'll be happy. So it's a real shift when we can train ourselves to be present and to actually don't leave any points on the table. So if you didn't get a point today, right, maybe you're busy, there's always a chance to get a point or two tomorrow. So there's more hope involved versus holding your breath for one thing to happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in this room can probably relate to that feeling of waiting for the job, waiting for the partner, waiting. And as you delay, like the benchmark keeps moving. You know, I recognize that in myself as I was thinking about all the different, experiences in my life. And I'm like, what does happiness really feel like? And I'm glad you gave us that definition. Your lab, I have this lab coat, which I'm very excited about. I feel like an official doctor. And in the lab, the motto is understand the science of your happiness. And so everyone take that in, understand the science of your happiness. So I'm sure each person has a different idea of what that means. I want to hear what you mean by that, because I feel like you're going to give us the data behind it too.
Well, when I thought about a book tour, I thought I didn't want to just sit with someone and talk the whole time. I want people to understand the science of happiness. And the motto of the lab is understand the science of your happiness, because there will only ever be one glory, ever, in the future of the universe and the history. Only ever one Judith. So when we realize that we're here for a reason, that the chances of us existing are just so small, then that puts things in perspective. So then why do we use other people's tools to make ourselves happy without understanding the science of our own happiness? So I wanted to democratize this information and put it in a book and make it very easy for everyone to understand, because there are these tools that most mental health professionals and medical students learn, but I just felt like everyone should know this, right? And there's a model in there. You'll see it in your little leaflets, but it's from the book. It's called the biopsychosocial model. And just like every human has a fingerprint, we all have a biopsychosocial. But just like how our fingerprints are all different, we all have a different biopsychosocial. So I'll use myself as an example. Biologically, I have certain medical conditions that may drain from my points of joy. Psychologically, I have different types of trauma than some people in here. I grew up with very little bit, and I have scarcity trauma. I talk a lot about that on my content. So that makes me feel as if I have to keep working because I'll run out, even though logically I know I won't run out. Yeah. And then socially, who's in your life? How much movement are you getting? What type of foods are you eating? What are the habits? Like, who are the toxic people draining your life force? These are the social things. So if we understood our own unique biopsychosocials, then we know the science of what's making us unhappy. So we know how to add back those points to understand the science of our happiness.
Yeah. And it's so much of it. Like I was reading, I told you earlier, I've been reading your book. I've also been reading Mel Robbins. And there's so many different ways to shift your mindset. And it's like once you pair the science with your, with the knowledge of so many incredible people like yourself, it's like you can shift your mindset. Can you talk about just spreading awareness? And this term, I would love for you to say, because I don't want to say it incorrectly.
Anhedonia.
Anhedonia. Yes. Like when I saw that, it gave me pause, and I was like, because it sounds like a historical word too. It's like something Aristotle would say, So I was like, oh, what does that mean, and how really? Can you break that down to us? Elaborate what that means and how it applies to our lives.
Yeah, it sounds like an exotic place, right? Yes. In historic times.
Like with the, White Lotus.
Right. Anhedonia. Or Game of Thrones. But anhedonia is a very old medical term that most doctors know, but most people have never heard of it. And it's important because many people have experienced it. It literally means a lack of joy and pleasure and interest in things. So when patients come to me and they're like, I feel meh, blah. I'm like, oh, did you know that's anhedonia? And they're like, anha what? So I wanted people to understand this. It's important to name these things because when you name emotions, it's similar to being in let's say you're in a dark room and you hear a loud crash and you don't know what it is, you can't see it. Some of us would start swinging, some of us would start running, some would start screaming. But if you turn the light on and you saw, oh, that was just like a bookcase that fell, I'm safe, then you're like, whew, you're relaxed. Knowing and identifying the emotion is therapeutic in itself. So when we can name an emotion, if we can name, oh, that's anhedonia, that in itself is therapeutic. That decreases the stress level. And that's why validation is the first V in my 5V methodology in the book. Acknowledge and accept your emotions. It's very difficult for many of us who are busy and who are pathologically productive to acknowledge how we feel because we tend to push down how we feel. But when you push down the negative emotions or you push down the pain and trauma, you don't process it, you may be pushing down the ability to access joy too, because you're using that as a coping mechanism. And that's why many of us experience anhedonia.
I now consider myself part of the HFD tribe because I definitely recognize some of the traits as I was reading your book. But you do it in such a way that it eliminates any kind of stigma. It really allows you to connect with and have an understanding. And I love the fact that you're telling us to label it, say what it is. Can you just talk about what is the reason many high-functioning people have a hard time slowing down? And as I ask this for the group, I'm also asking for myself, why does being pathologically overproductive a thing?
Yeah, so, in research, when we classify major depressive disorder, we use this big Bible thing called the DSM-5. It's a diagnostic manual to classify conditions. And in my lab, I do a lot of research with medicines like ketamine and psilocybin. And in order for someone to meet criteria, you have to have all these symptoms of depression, like poor concentration, low energy, problems with sleep, low mood, anhedonia, like slowness or restlessness. And then at the very bottom of the checklist, it has to say that you've lost functioning or impaired functioning or you're in significant distress. Well, I was seeing a lot of people who were doing the checklist and then the bottom was actually, no, I'm showing up. I'm over functioning. And I don't really identify my feelings. So in healthcare, what do we do with those people? It's like, okay, well, come back when you break down. But I think that's a shame. And it's like, for mental health, we're like in the dark ages, because when you look at what's happening in physical health right now, look at what's happening in terms of cancer. No one's saying, let's wait to get to stage 4 and then we'll intervene. Yeah. No, that sounds silly. We'd say prevent the cancer. Let's teach people how to reduce the risk, point out the signs, and then we're taking a proactive approach. The same for heart disease. No one's saying, come to us when you're having a heart attack. We say, no, reduce the heart risk. Let's reduce cardiac risk. Let's educate patients. But in mental health, we're still waiting for that box to check of low functioning or no functioning or distress. And I have some theories that I talk about in the book about that. One of them is that there are just not enough healthcare professionals to meet the demanding mental health crisis. The other is that I think a lot of healthcare professionals themselves are high functioning. I think it's hard to look at a patient and see something in them because it forces us to look in the mirror, right? And then I wrote about high functioning because of my own experiences with high functioning depression. I was sitting at a desk in 2020 giving a talk to this large hospital system, and I was supposed to be leading them through hardship. But then halfway through the talk, I was like, I think I'm depressed. And how did this happen to me? I'm a psychiatrist and I study anhedonia. How did this happen? But I thought, well, if this could happen to me, this can happen to anyone. And many of us who are pathologically productive, we are busying ourselves to avoid processing the pain. That's what I found in the study. The first peer-reviewed published study on high-functioning depression in the world, done by my lab. I found a correlation between trauma and high-functioning depression. So with PTSD, usually people avoid things that trigger them. With high-functioning folks, we busy ourselves. We work to busy ourselves to distract from pain. And it's different than burnout because burnout is an occupational hazard. So the actual environment at work is causing the pressure. So typically when you're removed from the workplace, you're better. Us high-functioning folks, you can take us out of work and we'll still find a way to be busy on the weekend. We take on someone's problems. We'll take on a hobby or 2 or 3 or 4. We can't sit still. When we don't have anything to do, we feel empty. When we're not busy, we feel restless, right? Because we're running from something rather than processing it.
Yeah. Can we talk more about the term that you just noted, the pathologically productive? What do you mean by that term, and what are ways that individuals can self-identify and figure out if this is something what's the fine line between being assertive and ambitious and pathologically productive? You know what I mean?
It's a great question, and usually the symptom that gets people to my office is the meh, right? Meh. Because they're doing the work and they used to enjoy it, they used to feel passionate, and now they're just doing it just to check the box. And it's okay to be ambitious and to strive and to do all these great things, but just remember that joy is built into our DNA for a reason. So if you're lacking joy, you're missing out on your birthright as a human being. You are here to be joyful. So if you're doing things and you're going through the motions and you used to get joy from it, but now it's just a fear of failure or just something else pushing you to be busy, then you're missing out on your joy. And everyone in here deserves that.
Yeah. You've developed a way for people to heal from high-functioning depression. What can you talk about the 5 Bs? Because they're you guys, once you put this into your journal, put in your notes app, and you keep revisiting, it really does change your brain or how you start to perceive things. Just can you walk us through them?
Yes, I actually got the idea from for numbers from my daughter's homework, because when she was very young, they were learning, why it is that we use numbers. And the number 5 is something that is universal. And I think it's because most of us have 5 fingers. Most of us do, right? So 5, 7, 10, 3, these are numbers that resonate. But I like 5 because when you look at your hand, just look at your hand right now and just imagine that you're built with the DNA for joy. So many of us lost a way to reclaim it. So imagine that you're just like reclaiming that joy. And you can tap into one of the 5 V's, get a point or 2 a day. The first is validation, like I explained, like naming and identifying the feeling. The second is venting. So I talk about venting, which is expressing how you feel, but there are do's and don'ts to venting, right?
You got to break it down because I think we can vent. We can definitely vent. So what is like the crossing the line where you're just like maybe being,
Yeah. So there's trauma dumping where you're just like, blah, 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 right? Yeah. You're not asking for emotional consent from the person. Like, oh, do you have a time to talk? Is this a good time? You're not venting with intention. So you just want somebody to get on your side. You don't have a clear idea of, resolution in place. But sometimes, for my nonverbal or my less verbal clients, I have a lot of neurodivergent clients, they don't really like to talk a lot about it. So what they'll do is they'll write in a journal, or they'll sing, or some people feel more comfortable praying or even crying. Those are all healthy ways to express emotion. And then the third one is values. So think things that give you meaning and purpose in life. So priceless, not price tags, So think about like your family, your faith, the things in life that give you purpose. And then the fourth is vitals, which is you got to take care of your brain and body. You only get one. And so I put the non-traditional vitals in there because most doctors will say, eat well, so that your brain isn't inflamed, eat unprocessed foods or get good movement or, get sleep. But there are 3 non-traditional vitals I put in there. Your relationship with technology, because that's one I think is going to impact us down the line. Our work-life relationship and our relationships with others, because our relationships with people is the number 1 predictor of our health outcomes and longevity. So I wanted to stick that in there. And then the 5th is vision. How do you plan joy so that you keep moving forward instead of getting stuck in the past? And that means celebrating big and small wins, right? So I know you're a mom. I am too. If I get my kid to school on time, like I did this morning.
Me too.
I sit in my living room and I have my coffee, and it's good coffee because I tap into my values. So I get like the locally grown stuff. And that's my time, just to be present and say, I did it. I got the kid to school on time. She didn't look like Who Shot John. Her hair's combed. That's my ritual every day where I celebrate my win and I look forward to that. And I wanted to demonstrate the 5 V's here today because I think it's helpful because I'm a professor, I like to see you use it in motion. And you don't have to if you don't want to. I'm not one of those professors that forces you to do it. Because I had severe social anxiety when I was in college and I hated being called on. But so what I want to do with the 5 V's is I want you to trust me with this and just close your eyes just for a minute. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but just for a moment, just think about something that happened that you never wanted to talk about. It was painful. You never told anyone, and just tell yourself, it happened and it wasn't my fault. And just say it in your mind, you don't have to say it out loud. Now you can open your eyes now. That was validation, self-validation. Venting is expressing how you feel. And if you feel comfortable with it, on a count of 3, I'm going to say, just on a count of 3, say one emotion that you felt today. We're not labeling it good or bad. It is what it is. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, y'all look good. I need to have y'all in my lecture. And then the third is values. So I have Nikki here who's with my lab, and she's going to hand out some Sharpies. And in your little pamphlet, it's identical to what's in the book. There's a list of values in there. I believe it's at the very end. And so when you think values, think like priceless, not price tags. So things that give you a sense of purpose, things that when you're in your last minutes or hours of life, you're like, oh, I wish I did that. Like no one here is going to be like, I wish I had a Porsche. You're going to be like, no, I wish I could spend time with the people I love, or seeing that sunset that took my breath away just one more time. Things like that. So just like the people who have the rocks, if you have one on your chair, this is for you. just write something on there from that list of values. So think things that give you purpose and meaning. And when you are feeling lost and you're feeling like, empty, just think about rooting yourself and staying grounded in those things. Oh, thank you. So mine are faith. So I'm going to put that in the water. Family. Knowledge, because I'm a bit of a nerd. I love to learn. But I wasn't always learning just for fun. I was learning at one point just to get, good grades, and it took the joy out of it. So now I read a lot for fun. Community. That's why I spend so much time pouring into my community. It's selfish. It makes me feel good. And then, we have a little experiment here. We're going to have to hold it up at some point. But when you lose sight of the things that give you purpose and keep you rooted, it's hard to see what really matters. You get distracted. And so, when you're feeling lost, with my clients, what I do is I say, pull out that stone. Did you get distracted by the things that really are superficial again? They're like, and I'm telling you, these are smart people. And it's not about intellect, right? Because we all get so busy. Sometimes we're running from things and we don't even realize it. So we all need to slow down and just reflect a bit, validate, vent, tap into values. And when you start to do that again, it takes time, but you'll start to be able to see the things that give you purpose and keep you rooted.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, Nikki. And so the fourth V is vital. So I'm going to teach you something called V breathing. I got so lucky that there was a breathing that started with a V. I was like, yes! So plant your feet on the ground and put your hands on your lap. Just get settled in. And then if you want to, you can close your eyes, but you don't have to. And then I want you to slowly take a deep breath in through your nose, and then out through your mouth, a little slower than through your nose. And then one more time, in through your nose, and then out through your mouth. And then for the third one, I want you to try to be intentional with this and not breathe from your chest, but through your belly, through your diaphragm. Again, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. All right, you can open your eyes. What that taught you was that it just took a couple of seconds for you to slow down, to validate that you are a human being, not a human doing. And that was a point of joy you just got. Because guess what? When we measure happiness, we also add up whether or not you're stressed. It's really hard to be happy when you're stressed out. So using those tools to lower the stress level is so important. And we can't tell our hearts to stop racing. We can't tell our brains to stop thinking. We can't tell our liver to stop processing. But we can hold our breath. So that's there for a reason. But we just take it for granted. And then the last V is vision. After you leave here today, I want you to thank yourself because you didn't have to be here. The DC traffic sucks. And I'm from New York, so. And you didn't have to, take time out of your day to learn about the science of your happiness, but you did. So you should thank yourself. And then plan joy, something small in the future to keep you moving forward so that you don't get stuck in the past.
I have just 2 more questions, and then we're going to open it up to the Q&A, because I know you all have a lot of questions, especially about how to put these things into practice. Okay, so now that we've gone through that beautiful exercise, how can everyone leave here and spread joy after they've learned about the 5 V's, no matter what their age, we have an intergenerational audience, or the stage in life?
I'm glad you brought that up because one of our first events was doing the 5 V's using slime. And that was an all-age audience. And let me tell you, the adults were having more fun than the kids, right? Because we forget how to play and have fun and be present. But what I would say is that, studying anhedonia, in the way that if you've ever had the unfortunate event of having a boss that was grumpy and joyless, I'm sure none of y'all had that ever. But when you walk into that workplace, everyone's like, "Mwah," they're all grumpy. Well, if you ever had a great boss who had a smile and who was pleasant, you notice a shift in the environment. People walk around with the pep in their step. They're like, hello, how are you? They're holding doors. Anhedonia is contagious, not in the way that a virus is, but you know how it is. If people are unhappy, it spreads. So if you are joyful and you invest in your joy, just you as an individual, you have the capacity to create change in your mini environment. So think about that. Investing in your joy can spread to others and it can heal communities. And we don't have a lot of control over what's happening in the world today. But if we invest a little bit in joy, we can really create change.
I love that. So before we open it up to the audience, get your thoughts up, hands in the air. I'm just curious to hear your take on the relationship with technology, since you are a fabulous influencer online and so many of us follow you. What is the balance of striking, finding the influencers that we love and the content creators, but also, not being overwhelmed or doom scrolling? How does one balance that and also take in the information that you're sharing?
Yeah, that's so interesting that you asked that, because I was just reading about this. And, one of the things that we don't realize is that we were never meant to look at our face that much. Think about it. If you and I were on a Zoom right now, my face would be right here. And I'd be like, how is my hair looking? Why did I, it's so distracting.
Yeah.
And there's a phenomenon called the autoscopic phenomenon. We learn it in psychiatry school, that where some patients who have, thought disorders, things like psychotic conditions, they may actually have these hallucinations where they see themselves. And it's extremely distressing for them to see themselves, right? But we're kind of doing that to ourselves now, because when you're FaceTiming, you still see yourself. When you're doing your TikTok and your selfies, you're seeing yourself. When you're talking to people on Zoom, you're seeing yourself. So there's something to that. It's creating a lot of anxiety. And so it's important to, there's something in my book called the reset method. The R is realize, how is technology impacting your life? Technology can be used for good. Many of us have health problems and we use technology to communicate. Many of us connect. I wouldn't know Talia had not been for TikTok. And so be able to realize how it's impacting you. Is it making you anxious? Is it making you less productive? Is it taking away from your social interactions? Is it disturbing your sleep, right? And then the E in reset is educate yourself. There are a lot of studies now based on childhood development, but there are newer studies coming out about how it impacts adults, that being online excessively can really harm our points of joy. It makes us have anhedonia. So understand that it hurts our sleep. Doom scrolling is a phenomenon where we try to watch these negative things online in an attempt to control them. It's kind of counterintuitive. Why would you put yourself in a re-traumatizing place when you can't control it? But we fool ourselves that if we just watch one more, we somehow can control the outcome. So recognize that. Learn about what doom scrolling is. And then the S is strategy. What plan are you going to put in place? Are you going to limit the amount of time you spend on it? Are you going to only follow certain influencers who build you up and don't make you feel bad about yourself? Are you going to only do it, in that afternoon, but not during dinner? Is it going to be a family thing? Have a strategy in place. The next E in reset is expectation. So what are you hoping to get out of this? Are you hoping to spend more time in nature, spend more time connecting, feel less depressed, less anxious, get better sleep, be more productive? And then the last part of reset, the T, is the thoughtfulness. So after you've put this plan in place, reflect on it. Was it too rigid? Was it too lax? If you said, I'm just going to give it up altogether, well, that's not going to happen. So have a clear process where you reflect to see if it worked and what needs to change. But I find that having these tools are helpful because technology is not going anywhere. It just isn't. So we need to learn how to live with it in a healthy way. And I talk about in my book how I truly believe one day that DSM, that Bible psychiatry, is going to have a whole section devoted to how tech impacts our mood and behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much. Now we're going to have Talia come up. And if you're not following her on TikTok, please do, or in Instagram.
Yeah, Talia, Cadet everywhere. Dr. Judith, Glory, thank you. So now we're gonna do a Q&A, and I know you all have questions. We're gonna keep it brief and succinct. In the interest of time, we have to get Dr. Judith out of here at 7:20. Does anyone in the audience have questions? Oh, first hand I saw, okay. Go for it. Your name, your question.
My name is Satish. The question that I have is regarding the values that you've written, and I'm a doctor. I've done some rotations in psychiatry, some therapy, things like that. But this is something that always gets to me. We always say that, as you mentioned, that we should be able to enjoy the sunset, and that deep need for external validation perhaps is always something bad. Maybe people just like achieving, and maybe goals is the way that they keep their mental health in check. So why is everything that we hear about it seem to be at odds with it? There seems to be no congruence. It's got to be either this or that. I don't understand that.
No, yeah, I don't think there's all or nothing thinking with that. But when we previously discussed it, we said there's nothing wrong with achieving, but it's that anhedonia, right? So many of us are go-getters. I know myself, I used to love to learn. You couldn't pull a book away from me. There was a competition in my school who could read the most books. And this is because I love learning. And I was like, I read the most books, and you got a whole bunch of candies. I don't know if y'all know now-laters. Yeah. But listen, I had enough now-laters to give everyone in my class. I didn't care about the now-laters. I was like, I want to read. But somewhere along the line, us as healthcare professionals, we lose sight of the things that actually bring us joy, and we start to feel meh, blah. We're no longer doing it for the joy. We're doing it just for the accolades. We're doing it just to appear a certain way. We've lost sight of the joy in it. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I talk about the 5 V's, but I don't want you going out and being high functioning and doing all 5. Pick 1 or 2, I have this this viral TikTok where I'm dressed in scrubs and I'm eating a salad, and the hospital's literally burning down, but I'm just eating like that. I mean, I get so many DMs from healthcare professionals saying, that is me. Because they identify. Many of us as healthcare professionals, we have so much trauma. And I used to be an anesthesiology resident for 2 years. And I was like, I got to get out of here. You see so much loss. And no one pulls you aside and says, oh, let's unpack it. It's well, who's taking the next shift? So much trauma in healthcare. And we're actually made fun of if we cry. God forbid we cry because something bad happened to a patient. But it's oh, this is part of it. What's wrong with you? We actually make fun of each other. How messed up is that, There's just so much trauma in healthcare. So I wanted to talk about that because you're right. Many of us are high achieving, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're lacking your birthright of joy, that is a sign. And it's not one that your doctor's going to say, oh, we got to do something about it. They'll say, are you still functioning? Yeah. Are you in crisis? Well, then get out of here, right? But I'm telling you, invest in your joy.
Good. Did you want to ask your question? Name and question.
Hi, Dr. Judith. My name is Tandi Mandaloka. So I really loved your definition of joy and happiness, the differentiation between it. I am from Zambia, and we have a word there, conduela, which means joy, but a deeper, indescribable joy. And it's something that I've been really trying to tap into lately. In part because the world is filled with uncertainty, and DC is especially feeling it, whether you're a gov worker, government contractor, laid off, and so forth. But so I was wondering, with uncertainty, and since you had mentioned to you that stress will detract from happiness, what are some tips that you have as far as how to build resiliency, if you will, for retaining joy, and also for kind of pushing down stressors when they keep coming?
Yeah, that's a great question. We feel it. There's this diagram in my book where I show a wave of an ocean of trauma, of bad news, and it's 2020, then uprisings in politics, then police brutality, then natural disasters than war. It's like we can't catch our breath, right? It's just like one thing after the other. No wonder we are lacking joy. And many times when let's say we felt really strongly about a cause and it doesn't work out, many of us have all or nothing thinking. We're like, you know what, forget this. I'm done, But I would like to challenge people and still not think about it as the idea of happiness. Like, I will be happy when my cause works and wins. Like, let's tap into little micro experiences of joy daily. So that could be, like for me, we have all these youth coming through our lab. And I know that the education system is going through stuff right now, but I could still pour into my community, right? And, for my values, I really do enjoy just nature and plants. And I know there's a lot of problems with climate change these days, but I'm just gonna still do my part to get through Central Park once in a while, It's those little things like that. I went to Zambia when I was a medical student. I did a rotation in South Africa, and then, we rented a car and just drove everywhere. And we were students, and I worked on an orphanage, and these children, they taught me so much because they had lost their parents, but yet they would run around smiling and singing and dancing and showing us dances. And I thought, wow, they have nothing. They've lost everything, but they're still joyful, right? Because it's built into our DNA. There are people across the world suffering, but they can still access joy. So I think I would want to challenge you to try and tap into that, right? Versus the all or nothing thinking, right? I'm only going to be happy when this one thing happens. Because guess what? Even if it happens, you're still not going to be happy. Right. So do that a little bit every day for yourself, and it will spread.
I'm going to go to the center of the room. You had your hand. Did you want to ask?
I did. So sorry. I'm Shelly. I was curious about when you were talking about validation of feelings. How does ego play into that? Because I feel like a lot of really successful, quote unquote, happy people have a hard time suddenly saying, I'm not happy anymore. I'm disappointed in myself or where I am in life. So how do you bypass the ego and validate yourself?
I say start small. It doesn't even have to be that high level validation. I recently gave a talk to 300 executives. Let me tell you, high power. I took a video of the front row because they had their purses and it was like Prada, Gucci, Chanel. And I was like, dang, and then I asked them, these high powered women, I was like, how many of y'all had to really pee in between your sessions, like your meetings, and you didn't, and you held it in all day, and they just busted out laughing? I'm like, we don't self-validate enough in the basic senses, right? If you're at your desk and you have to go, get up and go. You're not that important. It's really hard to be joyful when your pelvis is distended and in pain, right? That's a point of joy you're losing. So start with the small things, start with the basic things. Like, I really should go to the bathroom, and I'm a human being, not a human doing. Let me do that. I haven't eaten all day, and let me actually chew my food and taste it versus and get indigestion, Or, like my eyes hurt because I've been on screens all day. Let me just close it and just sit here and do some breathing. It's the small steps of being still. And I said that there was a high correlation between trauma and HFD. Well, in the PTSD studies I've conducted over the years, fight or flight, that revving up of your system, that can look like busyness. There's a psychiatric term called psychomotor agitation. It's a terrible name, but what it means is that you can't sit still. No wonder nobody knows what it is, right? Why don't we call it that in the books? Can't sit stillness, right? But it's like that revved up, like, I just can't relax. When you start to ground yourself, and there's a tool in the book called the 5-4-3-2-1 method, and you start to practice just slowing down, being still, and acknowledging your basic humanness, then you can start work your way up to those other more difficult things, right?
Right side, you in the gray sweater. Oh, we got 4 minutes, so maybe we could fit in 1 or 2.
I have so many questions on the technical science side. I'm also a scientist and a researcher, so, but that's not the question I'm gonna use this time. I really wanted to ask you, with your platform and your reach that you already have on TikTok, and in your practice, your private practice, and your study, what did you I guess, so I'm really passionate about also equalizing access to a lot of tools like this. What did you feel was needed that prompted you to add this book to the array of things that you're pushing out to reach people? And what other things do you feel will spread this wider?
Well, you know, I teach at NYU, and it's interesting because when I was an intern in the fellowship program there, a reporter came to the ER, and the head of the hospital who runs that ER, she's a wonderful person, but she doesn't see patients anymore. So she was like, "Oh, you're in the ER." It was a new psychiatric ER for children, one of the first in the country. She says, "You got to help me with this interview." And I was like, "Okay." I've never spoken to the press. And I remember reading the interview, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, why don't we get press training?" So I went to the director and I said, "We need press training." And he said, "You're going to teach it." That was his answer. So I had to develop the course. So through teaching the students, the young doctors over the years, after 2020, they were just like, well, no one's getting their information from TV. The course was primarily teaching them how to do TV interviews and radio interviews and print interviews, because a lot of times doctors use big words. They were saying that we need our information to be on socials. That's where all of our patients are getting their information. So I had to develop the course to teach them socials, but I didn't know how to do it. So I had to teach myself how to do it and then teach them. I had no idea I was going to go viral, like no idea. And if you saw the video that made me go viral, you'd be like, what, how? But it was a TikTok. And so the reason that I wanted to write this book was because I got so many DMs and people saying like, I need more information. And you can only do so much in 60 seconds, right? And, you know, I felt that a book would be helpful for people to go a little deeper. And that's been the vehicle for like carrying on the work that I started online.
All right. It's 7:20. Thank you, everyone. Let's give a round of applause.